But when you learn this work and you start to see that that thought pattern is reinforcing a message to your body that I'm not enough, I'm broken. And so the body does something about that. It adapts in response to our deeply felt emotions, our shocks, our traumas, the things that happen to us are communications to our bodies.
The entire contents of this podcast and website are based upon the opinions of Tammy Garcia and her guests, unless otherwise noted. The information on this podcast is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified healthcare professional and is not intended as medical advice. It is intended as a sharing of knowledge and information from the research and experience of Tammy Garcia and her guests. This is the Naturally Inspired Podcast, coming to you from our 1890 homestead in Johnstown, Colorado. I'm Tammy, and I want to thank you for joining us. Let's get started and help people feel good so they can do what they love for longer. Today on the Naturally Inspired Podcast, Dr. Melissa Sell is joining us. Melissa began her health discovery journey in 2005, right out of high school. She was raised in a typical family with mainstream views on health. She thought when you get a headache, you take a pain reliever, and when you're sick, you go to the doctor. But all that changed when she got a job as an assistant with a chiropractor. She started learning that the body is programmed for health and that everything that is necessary for healing is already present inside the body. So she went to chiropractic school and graduated top of her class in 2012. After graduating, she went on a quest to discover more about mindset and the body's innate wisdom and ability to heal itself. She found German New Medicine and the work of Dr. Hammer, and it was a game changer for her. It combined everything she loved about chiropractic philosophy with the supremacy of the mind. I hope you enjoy this exploration into new German medicine with Dr. Melissa Sell on the Naturally Inspired Podcast. I was so excited when we reached out and you were like, yeah, for sure, I'll come on. I was like, oh, this is perfect because I've been looking for somebody that explains this mind-body connection on a level that's more than just, oh, it's a mind-body connection, you know?
Yes. And G&M and Dr. Hammer's work, it's the key. It's the missing link in all of health. It's all of natural health care, alternative health, definitely conventional health. His work, it's so mind-blowing and it's so biologically based. So it's not theoretical, it's not philosophical.
Mm-hmm.
It's natural science is what it is. And that's what makes it, and it resonates, and you can test it on yourself. Once you know the biological laws and you see it in action, it's no longer like, oh, somebody's theory about how the mind and the body are connected. You can see it in action.
Right. So tell us a little bit about you before we get into the nuts and bolts of that stuff. I want to know, because most people I interview, if they're natural health, there's a reason why they're there. And I love those stories because I think it resonates with people and it brings more understanding to this whole space of different type of health practice, right? Because that's what it really is. So why did you decide to become a chiropractor? Because I know that's how you started. And what took you there?
So mine was not like a health journey or a story. I got a job right out of high school. My mom's like, you need to get a job. And a family friend connected us with a husband and wife chiropractor team. And I started working as an assistant there. And I just kind of got immersed in the culture, and they'd take us to seminars where I'd learn more. And they're very much a whole body, like nutrition and education about vaccinations and all sorts of workshops and natural birth and home birth and La Leche League. And so I just got immersed into this culture that previously I didn't even know existed. I was raised very, normal American, didn't have any kind of focus on health, but I was always drawn to natural things. Organic foods, for whatever reason, always drew me in. But once I got into that world and saw just that health is not random, that the body has innate intelligence and it knows how to heal. And I saw it in practice, seeing, kids come in with issues and problems and start getting adjusted and their life changes and they just come into this environment. And so I was just so turned on by the whole world of holistic health and chiropractic. I was like, obviously, this is what I'm going to do with my life.
That's
And I
awesome.
went to chiropractic school was just an obvious next choice. And I just knew the whole time that it was going to be, I'm going to teach all of the things, how to have a healthy lifestyle, how to change your diet and exercise and do, spinal care. And so that was my vision going into chiropractic school, was just that whole body health. And that's what I did once I graduated in 2012. I worked full time for 3 years right out of school. And then kind of shifted away more part-time. And then I got into what I'm currently doing. It was kind of a personal journey, kind of going from teaching people all of the external things to do. Eat this, don't eat that. Do this exercise, take this supplement, do these things that I can watch you do, these different behaviors so that you can be healthy. And while in that world, I started seeing that, people will do the thing, they'll do the exercises, they'll take the supplements, they'll go on the 30-day challenge, and then they fall off. And then they have, they kind of go through these cycles. And I started witnessing that year after year with patients. And then I also started seeing things in myself. And so my journey took me from, doing all of this, lifestyle intervention work. And I journeyed into the mind because I had to go into my own mind because I was still dealing with emotional stuff, issues in my relationship, kind of subtle anxieties, worries, never feeling like I was doing enough, even though I was doing everything. I was doing all of the healthy lifestyle things. If someone looked at me, they'd say, she's got it all going on. But inside, mentally, emotionally, relationally, I was having issues. And so noticing those issues and seeing that I could eat the best food in the world and do all the best exercises and do all of the external things perfectly. But if I didn't have the internal going on, and if I wasn't aware of myself and my emotions, that I could still have a lot of problems. And so that's kind of where I started to veer off into the world of mind, and away from so much of the physical stuff.
Did you see that in your chiropractic practice as well? Because I know Chiropractic Care, I've interviewed a lot of chiropractors and I've been to chiropractic offices and, I have enough time around it. They are the last people that end up, they just end up having to save everybody because most allopathic has been exhausted by the time they get to you. And they've done treatments that have maybe even added to their ailments. I mean, you guys get all the messiest of the messiest cases. The vaccine injured land in your office because you're the only ones that will actually acknowledge a lot of the time that that's the issue. So you really, you must have seen a ton of variety of different cases and journeys. Is that where you kind of started to realize that this was more of because you can tell people to do all these things and it's going to work for some people and it's not for some. And so did you see that it wasn't working and that there might be another component there when you were practicing?
I did. Yes. And so that was, when I give all the best recommendations and all of the things, and I would do everything I knew to do in the realm of, adjustments and rehab and things like that. But if the problem was still going on, sometimes I would kind of be baffled. I'd be like, gosh, I thought we cleaned up your diet. So we took out the sugar, we took out the inflammatory foods. We did all this, we're doing these exercises, and you get to a point where it's like, gosh, there's got to be something more, because I don't believe that people are broken or that their bodies can't heal, but there had to have been something going on that I was not aware of, that I wasn't intervening in. I wasn't giving any assistance because the pattern was still happening. And so that did get frustrating after a while. And yes, like people tend to, come to the work, come to chiropractic, come to an alternative health practitioner, from that world though of allopathy, which is like, fix me, doc. Here, I'll, come in and do the thing to me. And this is a big thing, is like somebody doing something to you or prescribing something for you to do this and don't do that. If the issue is not in about like what you're eating or what you're doing or what I can do to you, but it's rather in the inner workings of your own most private space, which is your mind. And until we can get in there and you can start seeing what it is, how are you perceiving your world? How are you perceiving yourself? How do you respond inside of your head when you have a symptom?
Mm-hmm.
Are you beating up on yourself? Are you feeling like a piece of crap? Are you feeling like a bad mom? Like you're just no good. And if you don't realize that narrative of I'm no good, I'm not good enough, I'm letting everybody down, we think that those are just private thoughts that are just locked up in our mind that we can just keep in there and they're not going to do anything. But when you learn this work and you start to see that thought pattern is reinforcing a message to your body that I'm not enough, I'm broken. And so the body does something about that. It adapts in response to our deeply felt emotions, our shocks, our traumas, the things that happen to us are communications to our bodies.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I've said this for a while now. I've noticed that people's symptoms are based in fear a lot of the times, and so it's really interesting because people who are fearful of the symptoms almost like gravitate towards the symptom and manifest the symptom. And I'm not saying they're faking. That is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that you're living it. So you're expecting it. Your brain, you're giving the messages to your brain. And so your brain is producing them. What if you didn't have that fear or that thought? What if that wasn't there? Would it be different? That's always been really interesting to me.
Absolutely. And that's what GNM will give. That's what this work and the 5 biological laws, it gives you a way to make sense out of not being afraid of symptoms. Because right now it's like, it sounds really good to not be afraid of it. But when you have a story in your mind that this is bad, this could get worse, this could spread, oh my gosh. And the only understanding that you have for the health issues that you have going on is that there's something wrong. And if you can start to see, and that's what we'll get into in kind of describing the work of GNM and understanding your biology from this perspective, you'll start to see this is all meaningful. This pain is meaningful. This tumor is meaningful. This, quote, infection, this sore throat, this inflammation, it's actually meaningful. It's part of a normal biological program that my body is actually producing from the inside out. It's not an outside entity, a disease that has taken over me, because that's one of the big things that creates the fear is we create this othering, like the virus, it came into my body and it's the invader. And now I have to go to war against it. Or the cancer, it is random and it just grew in my body and I have to go to war against it. And that's what creates that fear, because there's an enemy within. And so how can I not be afraid of that? Right. And so, so by understanding these things in our bodies as adaptations and as intelligent rather than erroneous mistakes, that changes. That will help to get rid of that fear. And yes, when you get rid of the fear, that helps everything heal. That helps everything improve so much more quickly than if you're burdened with terror and panic and fear.
Yeah. So let's get into German New Medicine. Where did it come from? And guys, if you haven't already, because I've been putting out your stuff the last couple of days, so I'm hoping that people will take the time to watch the video that you did about this, because this is it's so perfectly laid out. It hits every facet just, right lined up. So it makes perfect sense. So if you haven't watched the video, go to you can still get it on YouTube. I'm assuming I watched it a little while ago. So hopefully so much is being taken down, but I think your stuff is still there. It's been there for 3 years. So I think hopefully it's safe. So you can go there and watch it, watch her YouTube. It's just Dr. Melissa Sell, and it's a German New Medicine, and you'll find it. And it's just wonderful. You can probably go straight to your website and watch it as well, right?
Yeah. Or just look at GNM 101 and that should be the first video that comes up.
Yeah. So definitely go and watch it. But for the sake of this conversation and context, can you give me a little briefing on, I know it's not brief, really can't be. If you really want to understand it, you got to watch the video.
Totally. Yeah, it is. It's so in depth. But the story, so this is Dr. Hammer. He's a German medical doctor. And in the late 70s, his son was on a trip and got shot. And so he didn't die right away. He died after a few months, but he ended up dying in his father's arms. And it was a shocking, tragic trauma for his whole family. And so after this loss, a couple months later, Dr. Hammer discovered he had a testicular cancer. And this was very surprising to him because he had been healthy his whole life. There no history of cancer in his family. And so he had an idea that there was definitely a connection between the loss of his son and this cancer forming. And so he took that idea and started to ask questions, started to interview patients. He worked in an oncology unit, so he had access to a lot of cancer patients, and he started to discover things about them. And he started finding that everyone that developed a cancer had a shock, had some type of trauma in their life. But then he saw even more connections that, he had testicular cancer. So all the men who had testicular cancer also had some type of tragic loss, severe loss. Every woman who had a glandular breast cancer, a lobular breast cancer, had a nest worry of a particular type. Everyone with a lung tumor had a death right conflict. Everyone with a colon tumor had an indigestible morsel conflict. Everyone with these different types of cancers had very specific types of experiences that they had gone through that were shocking. And then he looked in the brain. He did brain scans on people, looked at the CT scan, and he started seeing that because he, part of his, as he was piecing all of this together, he's like, okay, something happens in a person's life. Something's going on in the organ. There has to be something in the brain to mediate this whole process. And he found it. He found that when a person has a shocking trauma, depending on the way that they perceive that shock, it registers in a particular area of the brain. And there's a measurable impact. There are these circles, these ring formations in the brain that can be viewed. And that organ or that brain area controls a specific organ and tissue. Wow. And so that tissue starts to adapt. And this is the big, profound, kind of like jaw-dropping, stop the show thing about GNM is that the cancer is not something going wrong, because that is the programming that is what we've thought for a very long time is what is cancer? Oh, well, cancer is cells growing out of control. And that's the idea, is that something's gone wrong. There's an error in your body, whether you've, had DNA damage or poisoning or whatever. We think that something's gone wrong in the mechanism of the cell. And now the cell's just replicating out of control. And we think we have to go in and stop the process because, the body's screwing up. Right. But this is, with my, my background in chiropractic, one of the things about chiropractic is the recognition of innate intelligence. And that is the self-healing capacity of the body. The body built itself. The body is extremely intelligent. It built your eyeballs, it built your heart, it built your lungs, it built all of these tissues, and it's constantly rebuilding them every moment of the day. And so there's this deep inherent wisdom in our bodies, but because of the mechanistic view of, allopathy and conventional medicine, they see the body like they see a car that can screw up, can mess up, can have problems. And so we see the body kind of as like a stupid meat suit that can have problems that we need to come and intervene in. And it doesn't recognize this innate brilliance. Right. And so Dr. Hammer found that when we experience a shock, so let's say you have a death fright conflict, you almost get hit by a car or something's chasing after you, and you in that moment are like, the body gets this signal, we have to get more oxygen into our blood because this is a death fright, because even a little bit more oxygen in your blood to help you to get out of this situation could mean the difference between life and death. And so when you have that shock and you perceive it in that split second, there's an impact in the brainstem. And then in the lungs, there is proliferation of additional lung cells, of alveoli. And what the alveoli do is absorb oxygen so it can get into the blood. And so having more alveoli in that particular situation is a good thing. We're very happy that the body is building these extra lung cells. But if you look at it out of context, you can say, oh my gosh, there's a tumor in the lung. This is bad. This is wrong. We need to get rid of this. And so by understanding, this is how this information will help free you from the fear of disease and the fear of symptoms. Because once a person resolves that conflict, you're no longer in the death fright. Whew, okay, I'm safe. Right. the body actually has a plan to decompose those extra cells, which is just amazing. And so the body uses bacteria and fungus to decompose, just like you see bacteria and fungus break stuff down in the forest. We've got mushrooms on things because it's decomposing matter, tissue that's no longer needed. So once the body doesn't need those extra cells, the body shifts gears, and the brain tells the bacteria, it's now time to break down that tumor. And so when you start coughing up yucky stuff and you cough up blood and mucus, we think, oh my goodness, you're sick, you have a problem. But you've in fact resolved a problem. You resolved your death-right conflict, and now the bacteria are breaking down the cells that aren't necessary, and you're coughing it up. And that is a good and normal and healthy process, not an infection from an invader.
Right. Right. Well, it's just like with kids when they get a cold, right? The tendency is to want to stop all the symptoms, right? Oh, stop the snotty nose. Let's give them decongestant. Stop the cough because, you know, they don't want to have anyone suffer through the symptoms. But that's the body's process of healing.
Yeah.
So literally, allopathy is based off of stopping the body's normal process from healing. It's based off of that.
Yes, that is the fundamental premise, is to stop the symptom, stop what's happening. And when you don't understand that what's happening is normal healing that the body is going through, exactly right. You are stopping the healing by stopping the symptom. And, you know, yes, there are some times, just to put in the caveat that, you know, there are times where medical intervention can be beneficial. If you've had an extremely long conflict that went on for years and years and years, and you have a lot of tissue adaptation. In some cases, removal of a tumor, for example, from the colon would just be the best thing to do, because the healing process for that could be so extreme that you might not make it through it. Right. And so there are wise ways. And that's the cool thing about when you understand the body and why it does the things that it does, you can make intelligent intervention. Right. And so it's not about completely eschewing medicine completely. Right. It's about using it intelligently, rather than we just, you know, we use it for everything. We cut out organs all the time. We're medicating everybody. And so we're going so overboard. But when you understand it, you can use it wisely.
Yeah. Or planning your birth. You know, this has become so popular, and it just kind of blew my mind because I'm from Canada and I actually moved here pregnant. And it never occurred to me that anyone would ever, because in the Canadian medical system, they didn't ask you that at that time. I didn't even find out the gender of my first baby because that's the way they do things there. And then here in the States, they were asking me when I wanted to deliver.
Wild.
Yeah, I was like, I actually don't get to pick that. Right?
Like, baby, it's up to the body.
Yeah. But, you know, doctors like to go on vacation, and it's just easier to plan things. And I've known people that have planned their pregnancies that way. And it just kind of, you know, we've just gotten more and more and more reliant on that model and less on what our body does on its own.
Yeah. Right. And we don't trust nature anymore. We're so disconnected. Yeah. We've forgotten that, like, nature and the body are these natural ecosystems. And so there are normal ways to function. And that when you leave that normal way, when you intervene, you create cascades of problems. And really, you know, the mentioning of the birthing system really is the way that we undermine faith and trust and confidence in the body. Is we break the minds of women and we say, you're not strong enough. Oh, it's so hard. The head is too big. Your pelvis too small. It's dangerous to do it at home. You need to do it. That is the very first indoctrination. And so if you have young women who are going to have babies and you fill their minds with terrifying ideas and you say, oh, give me my epidural. I don't want to feel it. Right. Knock me out. Just cut the baby. And if that's the entrance into the world, I mean, the baby is indoctrinated into the system of your body is broken. You don't know what to do. You need machines and pills and injections in order to stay alive. And so that's why, kind of, when we first got on this call together, we talked about how crazy it is that people are just falling for this it's so clearly a scam, but they're falling for it hook, line, and sinker, no question.
Mhm.
because of the fact that from the day that they were born, from even before they were born, when they were having, exams from the doctor, there's worries and concerns and ultrasounds
Mhm.
and testing, and we're
Right.
intervening because we do not trust the body anymore, and we trust the medical doctor, the person in the white coat, to tell us how to be okay, rather
Right.
than trusting our own flesh that built itself, that
Mhm.
knows how to heal. If you've ever had a cut, if you've ever had a broken bone,
Yeah.
haven't you seen the miraculous way your body
Yes.
heals?
Yes, it's like going into a fight from defense mode all the time, right? So there's fighters, there's prize fighters that go in and they have a strategy to win. They're totally on the offense. And then there's the fighter that goes in thinking, well, this fighter might be stronger than me, so I need to go in with a defense.
Mm,
You're starting from losing. And
yeah,
that's how we are with our medical system. We automatically think, okay, we need all this stuff from the outside to help us. We have no offense. And that could not be further from the truth. That stuff should only be used as aids, right? Little aids here when I need it. Okay, maybe this, maybe that. But me, I'm whole and capable.
yeah. Absolutely. And that's the sad thing that the system does to people,
Mhm.
is to break them. And that's how they, and it's a great business model. You got to give them
Yes.
that. It's brilliant
But
because
that's what it is. It's a business model.
it's a business model. And
Mhm.
this whole last year and a quarter has been a marketing campaign. And that's
Mhm.
it. It's fear, it's distrust of the body, it's distrust of your neighbor, it's reliance on pharmaceuticals and medical interventions in order to merely be okay in the world. And
Mhm.
you have to just divorce people from nature for them to even buy that. And so the people that aren't buying it, it's like they have witness, they're paying attention, and they're not estranged from their bodies. They're realizing, this body is wise and it knows what to do. And it is, when I give it what it needs, it flourishes. And when I am in a state of balance and homeostasis, all is well in my world. And I don't even ever need somebody else to tell me what's going on with my body, because I just know.
Right. Do you think that could be part of it though? Just as you were talking, I was thinking, maybe that's what is a big part of it is they have no faith left because they've destroyed their bodies,
Yeah.
because obesity is so high, they're taking in toxins all the time and they know it maybe. And so they
Yeah.
just haven't, but in on the other flip side of that, it's like you've had a year and how many months to get it together. Like if I was in that state at the beginning of this pandemic where I had poor health or I was really out of shape, I'd be like, okay, it's go time, right? And this outreach of people like lifestyle coaches and health coaches and these kind of supportive positions could have been so instrumental. We
Oh
could
my
have
gosh.
changed
We had
everything by
mandated
now.
that. Let's mandate everyone has a health coach, everyone's got a trainer, everyone has
Yeah.
a nutrition consultant, because we gotta shape these people up. But
Yes.
that's the thing, is that's not where the money is. The
No.
money is in sickness, the money
Right.
is in chronic disease, the money is not in you waking up to your own innate power and the fact that your body is an adaptive, brilliant organism that can heal itself. No money in that.
That's
There's
right.
great health and peace and wonderful outcomes for you as an individual, but you aren't going to be a cash cow anymore.
That's
We
right.
can't have that.
That's right. On so a couple of your videos, I was really intrigued by this internal experience that you described. Like, what's it like to be you? And have you asked yourself that lately? Right. And so explain that in terms of how the cells communicate to the body and what is it like?
Yeah, so your experience, and that's the thing about paying attention to your consciousness and to your thoughts, and how do you perceive your world? Because we perceive things differently. Like, if something shocking happens to you in your life, you can perceive that in any number of ways. And if you're well rested and everything else is going pretty well, and a shocking thing happens, you can handle it with more grace. Maybe it still catches you off guard, but you return to balance. But if everything's going haywire and nothing's in order, and you're having financial problems and relationship problems and health problems and worries, and you're just like, your brain is just filled with so much input, and you're confused and you're not sleeping well, and then something happens to you in your life that's shocking, then it's like complete meltdown.
Right.
And so by paying attention to what it's like to be you and understanding that how I'm perceiving my world and how I am experiencing everything about my life, it is a communication to my body. My body is listening to every thought that I have, because at all times, you're just picking up data from your environment.
Yes.
Like your nervous system right now, like we're talking, but our bodies are also changing temperature. We're listening for a rustle in the corner because, survival really is number one. And so when your survival is in jeopardy, your body steps in right away. There's no time to think. There's just an immediate perception. And so your state of being, when you encounter a shock, a trauma, so if you encounter it from a state of, I'm already, I'm already burnt out, I'm already overwhelmed, and that comes in, the conflict can impact so deeply and so intensely and last for such a long time because you don't have any internal resources to bring yourself back to homeostasis. And so the power of paying attention to what it's like to be you, to check in with yourself. How am I doing? How am I feeling about, every area of my life? Are there areas that, I know I need to do work on, but I'm not doing work on it? It's like, what's that about? What is stopping me from doing the things because that's the thing, is so much of the work that I do with people, I'm not introducing them to, GNM definitely is new in like the biological laws, but as far as like, you know what you need to do, like, you know what you need to do, but what we need to figure out is what stops you from doing the things you already know you need to do. You don't need another nutrition book. You don't need another exercise book. Like you have enough information. What you need to work on are the obstacles that prevent you from implementing the things you already know to do.
Yeah.
You need to cut that person off. You need to stop, drinking every night. You need to stop doing it because it's not improving your experience and it's just a habit. And so paying attention to that helps you to kind of just figure out where I'm at, how balanced am I, how stable, and am I maintaining homeostasis, or am I living in constant fight or flight?
Right. I always like to think at like, if someone's drinking too much, what are you getting out of the drinking that you're not getting from your normal life?
Yes.
Right.
Such a good question.
What is the feeling? Because that's what we do, is we replace what we don't have with something, right? And our bodies do that, right? If it can't find magnesium, it'll pick up, boron or whatever in its place. So that's what we would do with our behavior too. Like something's missing from our normal functional life. So we go outside to try to fill that. So if you can figure out, why am I drinking so much? What is that bringing me? Then you have a better chance of, changing it, shifting it to something that will bring you that in a positive way.
Yes. And we just get so stuck in our habits and our loops and our ruts, and we let life dictate how we feel and what we do, rather than turning inward. And that is really what this work is about turning within and figuring out what's going on with me, instead of constantly looking out to the outside and being distracted by, the next biggest and loudest, and that's how people stay hooked on the news cycle, is like, we're addicted to the next big thing. And so we're primed for it. We're waiting for it. And so that's why a lot of people this whole last year, they've been high on adrenaline of a fake pandemic, and so scared and ordering takeout,
election fiascos.
One thing, and that's the thing, is in order to exit, you have to just see from a bird's eye view one dramatic thing after another and say, oh, I'm hooked. And they're the dealer, and I turn on the TV and I take it in, and then I don't have time to do anything because I'm so preoccupied with this worry, this fear, this drama, this, things that aren't right in the world. And so we don't turn within. And that's why we got to turn off all the external input. Some of you need to stop listening to podcasts.
Yeah, true. That's so true.
Because, sometimes we're just so desperate for what's the thing that I need? Yeah. And the thing you really need is you need to listen to yourself. You need to turn within. You need to slow down and stop the constant input. I mean, that's the thing about information. We can just be so engorged on information. Think about the average human now and how much bits of data, words, information, just one single scroll on your smartphone,
Oh, I
and
know.
you'll take in more information than your ancestors did in like a whole year.
Yeah.
And you just took it all in. And we take for granted, that our brain has to process all of those bits of information and store it somewhere. And
Yeah.
so
And
slowing down.
where
Yeah.
is it storing it? Right? We just take it for granted, like, oh, that's just a thought or whatever, and it just stays in my little box up here, and it's totally separate from my body. And that's not the case. I wonder if when we started treating people, if we just looked at their autonomic nervous system and calm that down. Like if that was the first order of business when someone came in with chronic illness or with an issue, if that was kind of the first order of business, I wonder how our treatment plans would change our results.
Everything would change. Everything. And that's the thing, is like just simple breathing, like
Yeah.
just breathing, paying attention to the fact that you can control your breath. That is like such an easy way, like an entrance into self-mastery, because if your breath is out of control and your heart rate's out of control and you're just constantly in fight or flight, by learning how to breathe and slow down, you'll see, I am in control of this vessel. My reactions, my emotions do not control me. I'm not controlled by anxiety or fear or depression or all of these states. I am in control. And so by stepping up and realizing that my body, even though sometimes, yes, if you're like having a panic attack, it feels like it's just happening, but it's not. It's coming from you. And by realizing that and kind of stepping into that place of power, and that's a big thing, is like taking your power back and not feeling like a victim. It's like when I feel like a victim of my anxiety condition, well, it's just here and there's nothing I can do, or I'm just a victim of my illness or whatever. That's that disempowerment. But it's easier than taking responsibility. Some people get offended. Some people have their feelings hurt when you say, this is coming from you. And that's not a blame, because we hear it as, you're blaming me, you're shaming me for this problem. But that's not it at all. Responsibility is the best thing that will ever happen to you. Taking 100% personal responsibility for everything about your life, all of the things, even things that did happen to you. Say, I get to control how I respond to this. And that puts you back in the driver's seat of your life, so that you're not simply a victim of circumstance, and you start That's what empowerment is. Yes. You feel as though you have power. And from a GNM perspective, when you think about your biology, that is everything, is feeling empowered, because it's when you feel small and weak and helpless and vulnerable, that's when your body's like, let's adapt. I'll build cells, I'll take cells away, I'll do whatever to help us survive. And so by feeling powerful, look at the areas of your life where you're currently feeling disempowered and start thinking, how can I take control of this? How can I start feeling more empowered with regards to the situation, instead of feeling like it's controlling me?
Right. I can so relate to that, because I went through a process, kind of like a dark night of the soul, if you will, overcoming fear of cancer. Because at 20, my 40-year-old aunt, who was like a second mother to me, died of cancer. And the minute she died, everyone went into genetics. Oh, it's your genetics. Oh, you better get screened more. This was the narrative I heard from allopathic medicine starting at 20, right? So this fear started building up, and it built up in my mom, and then my mom passed of cancer, right? So then that compounded my fear, because now not only was it her sister, but now it's my mom. And so every allopathic doctor I went to suggested additional screening, that I should be extremely careful. I felt like a sitting duck, completely disempowered, right? Yes. Until the point where it became a breaking point for me, when I was like, okay, I can't live like this anymore. I have to find out what cancer is, what it does, why it comes to be. I needed to find out everything I could. I went through this transformation of understanding that I'm in control, and that those things don't apply to me.
Yes.
And it was such a wonderful transformation, and so freeing, because here I was just like a sitting duck, and it just melted everything away, because I really understood my body's capability. So that's why I want to share this message with so many more people, because you don't have to live in fear. Your genetics do not define you. They don't.
Absolutely. So good. Absolutely. And that is freeing people from fear is the work. It is helping a person to find peace in their spirit, to trust their body, to trust themselves, and to not feel like they're just waiting for a diagnosis. They're just waiting for their body to screw up. Oh, because I'm past 30 or past 40, or oh, I've got
the gene.
I have the gene, or someone in my family. And that's the thing, is genes and germs, thinking that those are responsible for your health is like the ultimate disempowerment, because it's invisible. There's nothing you can do about it. And so it's like, well, we have to just screen and test and inject and give you all of these things so that you'll be okay. And that just leaves you so dependent on the crutch of allopathic medicine, on the just living in fear, because heck, you could do all the things that they say to do and get it and die anyways.
That's what I was going to say. You do all that stuff, you live in fear the whole time. And guess what? You haven't fixed the one thing that you needed to fix, was what you were thinking about the whole time. You were running from those screenings and appointments and preventative things. You haven't changed the one thing you need to, which is your mind thinking, holy shit, I'm going to get cancer.
Absolutely. And the whole system is just designed to, I was just speaking with someone who, like going in and having tests done and having, and then, I mean, just the idea, the only doctor I'll ever see every now and then is a dentist, because, but simply, I just want to have my teeth cleaned. I just want you to clean my teeth, because that's actually just a lovely procedure is to have someone clean your teeth. But yeah, it's the whole, like the doctor standing over my body and hemming and hawing and, saying, oh, well, this is suspicious, or this, or, or looking, up in my body. I don't do that, because it's a scary and a very disempowering situation where it's, something I don't about my body, and you're going to inform me of something devastating. And so it's like even going into that world is just scary.
It is.
Unless you go into it, and there are people that I work with that kind of straddle both sides. Well, they'll go to gather information, because if you're going for testing and you're just gathering information, I want to know the status of my tissue adaptations. But you really want to get out of the frame of mind of disease names and diagnosis of I have this and, this gene or this disease, because once you identify with it, it begins to have a greater sense of power over you. And it takes on kind of an entity of its own when you believe it is an entity of its own.
Right. It would be so interesting if somebody would actually do a study on mammograms, right? Because now, like in the last, 10 years or so, we've seen all this evidence of how scaring the crap out of women with false positives and all of that stuff. So they've actually tapered back now, saying, okay, you don't have to have as many, because they realized, well, they're giving surgeries and stuff for stage 0 cancer. And like this is getting out of hand, and people are actually manifesting symptoms because of their testing. Oh, well, there may be a shadow on your breast, and you're going to come back in a year. And if it's bigger, then maybe we'll do something. Go live for a year with thinking that you have a shadow on your breast tissue.
Right. And to think that that's not impacting you. The fear, the self-devaluation, the worry, just that thing in the back of your mind of like, there could be something wrong with me. And then yet, like you said, with the stage 0, someone I know had had their thyroid removed and all of this, and later come to find out they don't even diagnose what she had as cancer anymore. They just, it's like, it's the diagnostic criteria has changed. Wow. And people will go through radical surgeries for things that didn't ever need to happen. And you went through the fear and the worry. And it's just like with C-sections though, is they say, oh, well, better safe than sorry. Right. At least, we probably saved your life, even though you are, you went through this major surgical trauma and all of the healing that has to come from that. And then all of the money that went into doing that. And, we like to just kind of wrap it up with a bow and say, oh, well, it was necessary. And at least you're alive. Right. Without really realizing that deep impact to you as a person, that you had to go through all of that. And so, being more like when you are presented with a diagnosis, like really try to keep it at arm's length. Say, oh, that's an interesting opinion. I'll take it under review. And, go other places, learn more about what you have going on. And if a diagnosis currently is freaking you out and scaring you, I really implore you to learn the GNM perspective of that health condition, of that symptom, because truly, when you see it through this lens, your mind will be blown. I've never, ever experienced this to be inaccurate. It's accurate every single time that if you have a certain health condition, you experienced a certain type of traumatic shock in your life, a separation, a loss, a worry, something that you couldn't process, you couldn't digest, something happened, and either it's still happening, you're reactivating it, or you're in the healing phase and the body is actually just doing its thing to repair or rebuild your tissues. And so when you can see it through that lens, you'll get just a whole new dimension of understanding of what is happening in your body. And that will put you in that place of peace and freedom and empowerment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that the specific trauma stuff is very interesting. And I also want to add a component that I read a little bit about, and I don't know much about it, and maybe you do, but it's really intriguing to me that some trauma can be handed down generationally. So I thought, wow, that's so interesting because you think about that, it's not genetic, maybe it's more behavioral, but also in your mind, right? Because you're carrying that trauma from your mom or from your grandma, maybe even from your mom. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Well, that's the thing is like, you have to think about, so it's not genetics as in this, like, just thing that just gets passed randomly, but there are familial connections, because think about how connected you are to your family, or at least were when you were one in your mother's womb, extremely connected to everything that she was thinking and feeling and experiencing, all of her traumas, everything she dealt with, when you were first out in the world, your mother was your, was your kind of link to the world.
But it's like an energy transfer. Yes. Right? Because like even my daughter, so my mom passed away, but when my daughter was like 18 months, I think, and my daughter walks like my mom.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Like, what is that? Exactly. But I notice it. My sister notices it. My husband notices. It's like, oh my gosh, she walks like your mom.
Yeah. Spiritual, energetic. When a baby is tiny, they are totally filtering the world through how is my mother feeling?
Yeah.
And so they're learning about how to process, how to regulate their emotions through what my mom is doing. And so if mom is dealing with a lot, and if she's stressed and overwhelmed, and, she's dealing with her own traumas, those things are being passed into the child.
Yeah.
And so that's where, by paying attention to this work and understanding, wow, just even the influence of like things like ultrasound, we don't even think about, if the doctor is telling the mother, oh, something might be wrong with the baby, we're not really thinking about the experience of the baby, but the baby is having an experience of this like vibration, of this emotion of worry, of fear, of something might be wrong with me, and the ultrasound procedure itself, that impacts a child. And to think that just because a baby can't explain its emotions to us doesn't mean that they're not having them. And so the complexity of our internal experiences are happening from the very beginning. And so that's where, conflicts can take place. A lot of times people will ask me about like, cancer or childhood diseases that they had right away. But when you think about the fact that a child is having an experience in the womb of ultrasounds, of scary things their mom is experiencing, and so that's where adaptation can begin even before you're born. There's actually an example of this, a woman who was, she was in a very violent situation and held at gunpoint while she was pregnant. And so this like shocking fear, and the baby, when the baby was born, had clubbed feet. And so clubbed feet is, when the feet turn in, and the ankles, there's some malformation of the tissue structures in the ankles. And that would be related to a conflict of self-devaluation regarding not being able to get away. and so the weakness
Whoa,
within
that's
the ankle structures, because
fascinating.
she couldn't get away. She couldn't get away. She couldn't help her
Yes.
mother when she was held at gunpoint. And so it's like the baby had an experience, and the clubbed feet weren't a random thing that just was a mistake or a genetic problem. It was a specific adaptation in response to something shocking.
Whoa, that's mind blowing. We so need so much more study on this.
You're right. Yes, we do. Because when medicine, if they got turned on to this,
Yeah.
everything would change.
Yes.
But
Yes.
Dr. Hammer, his work has been suppressed
Of
because
course. Yeah.
they know, like they wouldn't even, like he wrote a thesis and he presented it to the university, and they just outright denied. They would not review it, because as soon as they review it, as soon as they have to even, accept or deny it or whatever, once it's in the record, it's over. Because once it's acknowledged in any way, people will find out about it. And then we will have to go down this road of more studies, more discoveries of exactly how our bodies work. And it will change everything about medicine as we know it.
Right. Well, take all the money away from them. I mean, that's really the end of that's what they're so scared of. But I feel like it's crumbling. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I see people every day that I knew before were completely, all allopathic and never questioned anything, saying and doing things way differently. Yeah. And I'm just so, you can't deny it. You cannot deny it. And speaking about, the virus, I wanted to ask you a little bit about viruses, because there are some people that think that viruses don't even exist. Can you talk about that a little bit and what your feelings? Because I love this topic, and I definitely think that it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you look at the history of virology, and we assume, that's just our basic assumption, is that of course it's legitimate. Of course the very accurate science is being done in that realm. They wouldn't build a whole, industry around it. They wouldn't tell us this if it wasn't true. But when you zoom in and you actually look at the papers, which few people actually do, but Dr. Stefan Lanka, he was a virologist who woke up to the fact that his whole field was built on smoke and mirrors. And he has a couple of really amazing papers. I actually, on my YouTube channel, I read the papers because they're so interesting, where he kind of chronicles, he goes back through what happened in the 50s around this virus isolation process, because it was this one guy, this John Enders, who went through this alleged isolation process. But when you see it, you'll see nothing is being isolated here. They're taking a sample and they're doing things to it. They starve the sample, they poison it with antibiotics, so they put stuff in it, and then they say that this is a virus. They say that it's isolated. So that's the whole story of a virus it's never actually been proven to exist in the way that we think that it does. We assume that, of course, there's a tiny little particle that if you put it on someone else, they're going to get that same exact disease, because that's, the Koch's postulates of there are criteria for proving something is actually exists and then is contagious. But those criteria have not been met for viruses, and specifically the one that we've been talking about lately. Yeah, it hasn't been done for that. And that's the thing too, is when you understand GNM and you understand that symptoms are coming from adaptations. And what Dr. Hammer said, the fourth biological law is the ontogenetic system of microbes. And so this is what Dr. Hammer found, like I mentioned about the bacteria and fungus. So those, they are functional. They serve a purpose. They are not random. They're not infecting you. Yep. They are helping you. Right. He said about viruses, he said, if they exist, they're there during the healing phase of ectodermal tissues that are controlled from the cerebral cortex. And so when your body goes into a certain healing phase, there is debris there. And so whether that the debris that's there is just an exosome, so whether it's just a waste product, byproduct, or if it's a cell that's actually, or rather a particle that's serving some type of purpose, like a communication messenger, or, it's removing debris, it's doing something. Right. But if we zoom in and we say, this is the causative agent, this is causing the disease, but it's the effect of an adaptation process. That is what we're looking at. And so that's the problem, is when we see it as this is causing sickness, It's never been proven to cause sickness. They've never isolated it, and they've never found that it proves sickness every single time. And therefore, you have to go back to the drawing board completely. Everything that we thought we knew about viruses, and then, vaccination, what we think we know about that is not accurate because we have the model wrong.
That's right. We're wrong from the foundation.
Exactly.
So it's interesting. If you've taken a look at the list of symptoms that includes, I'm glad you're laughing, because when I read the list, I'm like, I've really covered the gamut here, haven't they? I mean, diarrhea, stomach, fever, everyone says it's a respiratory issue, but, because those people were dying on ventilators at the beginning, we don't even know if they should have, we know now they shouldn't have even been put on ventilators, right? I mean, you're, again, treating a symptom that's trying to heal. That's what they did with the vents, right? And in the future, and this, may be controversial, but I think there's going to be some lawsuits with that.
Oh, heck yeah. Because I mean, that's the thing, is so many, and that's the case with so much of allopathy, is that the treatments kill the people.
Yeah. That's why it's the third leading cause of death in this country.
Not the alleged disease. But that's the thing too. We have to look at the, when we say someone died of cancer, when we say someone died of heart disease, which are the, the two in front of iatrogenesis.
Yeah.
Are you sure though? Are you sure that the cancer actually killed the person? Are you, or was it the intervention? Was it the procedures that we're trying to do to allegedly help this person? So everything about the system, because it is about suppressing the body, removing symptoms instead of supporting the body and knowing what it's doing. I mean, all of the things that they do from that frame of mind is going to cause more harm than good.
Yeah.
And it does.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you think everyone's life has been affected by cancer. Everyone's life has been affected by these major disease. And if you really look at it, you can see where people start to go downhill. They really start to get weak. And for me, it correlated with treatment. For the people I knew.
Yes.
It really did.
Yeah.
So this whole thing, pandemic, whatever we're still calling it, I don't know what we're calling it anymore. It's got its consequences outside of the virus itself or whatever, this lockdown stuff. And when you talk about internal experience, this scares me right now, because there's look at our young people, right? They've been living like this for over a year. And I've seen some young people change pretty drastically in the community and, friends as kids and stuff, with these masks, and like actually embracing the mask to the point where now they don't want to take it off. Like, we've got some major issues here now. Tell me about that. What are you thinking about that?
Well, I mean, it's very hard to even predict, because everyone is very unique in how they experience the world. And what's sad though about, everything that's happened is that the, people feeling unsafe in the world, and so we've got people on both sides of it. We've got people feeling unsafe because they're threatened with being vaccinated. They're threatened with having their, life shut down, not being able to go places, not being able to travel. So we've got people being afraid of that. And then on the other side, we have people deathly afraid that their neighbor's not vaccinated and they're not wearing a mask and they're afraid to go out. And so we have, it's just the classic divide and conquer strategy. And that's it. We've got people afraid. Yeah. And that's all that they need, because when you're afraid, your brain doesn't work. When you're afraid, you don't think things through. And so we have people who are just high on emotions and sugar and pharmaceuticals, and they're not thinking clearly, and so they can't even come to these types of conversations. They can't even be presented with an alternative idea, because their brain literally can't accept it, because they're in such fear, and so much is going on. So I have no idea, but I just hope for the best. And I envision a beautiful future where people kind of break out of the spell, because the fallout of this, especially from the GNM adaptation perspective, is, when people resolve these conflicts that they've had for a year and a couple of months, it's like they definitely can experience a lot of different health symptoms if they haven't already, as a result of resolving these conflicts. And so, it could be pretty intense for some people, which is why all the more reason I want people to learn GNM for themselves, because it is about being your own doctor. It is about understanding your own body. And that is the best empowerment that you can possibly have, is to know how your body works. So when your child gets a sniffle or a sneeze, when you have a sore throat, when you've got stuff going on, you don't have to run out into, the crazy world and try to find answers. You know the answers for yourself. And so personal responsibility,
get that fear phase.
Yes, absolutely.
Imagine how much, that would contribute to healing if everyone just could skip the whole initial fear phase, the panic, right? That would be so profound.
Absolutely.
What do you think about vaccine dependency? This is kind of my thinking with what's going on right now, because I've never ever in my entire life seen such a push, obviously, for a medical procedure. Bribing people to take it, extorting people to take it. You can't go to college without. That's extortion.
Yes.
Right. We're dealing with extortion here. Never seen that before. And then you add in the health passport, and this system that they're wanting to bring in. And I see the recipe for like a vaccine dependency society, where people have become so detached from their bodies and nature and their own ability that they now require, 3-month boosters on their vaccine passport just to make it through another year. And this is a frightening concept to me, but I think it's very there.
Well, I mean, from a business perspective, of course they're going to want that. I mean, that is, you have to upgrade your software every 3 months. Yes. And that's what they, and especially with who even knows what's in it, what it's doing. And yeah, I mean, that's definitely a way that this could all go. But that's, from an individual perspective, it is doing the best for yourself, paying attention to, if that scares you, and it's like, okay, so what practically can I do? What practically can I do? Keep putting out the information, sharing with people. Hopefully people will start waking up. And if they don't, it really is, what can you do? We can't do anything about the people who aren't ready to hear it, it's like the whole stay in the matrix thing.
Yeah.
People, they don't want to wake up from the matrix, because they, even if they start to see a couple of things, they'd start to realize, oh man, I'm going to have to backtrack on my perspectives for the last 5-10 years. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that type of turnabout in their life. It's too heavy to acknowledge it in a lot of cases. And so we just have to keep, holding on to our freedoms and standing for freedom and health freedom and the ability to go places and do things. And so I think that there's a lot of people doing really good things right now. And I think focusing on that and, empowering yourself is really all we can do.
I think, it's possible that people, could get that detached, but at some point there would have to be a breaking point. Right. I mean, that's how I try to kind of keep looking at it. Well, if we have to go through this period of time where people are dependent on it, it can't last, right? Because we're not designed that way.
Yeah, it can't last. And they're going to wake up to it, or there's going to be catastrophic consequences for those who've been partaking.
Yes.
And one of those two things will wake them up.
Right. It's got to come around one way, shape, or another. What does a paradigm shift look like? I love talking about this, because I feel like this is such an opportunity, right? To change the whole dynamic. It's a paradigm shift into this new kind of more empowering, independent way of healing, of practicing medicine. What does that look like to you though, as a practitioner? What would be like ideal that people, took care of their health this way? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I would, start with, looking at how people, why do people think why do I think I get sick? You have to ask that question. So people asking, why do people get sick? Why do I believe that disease happens in the body? And then you're going to have to come up with your first answer, and then you're going to have to dig a little bit deeper. And so a paradigm shift, is one that things make sense based off of nature, because a lot of things that we do, in the healthcare world, just in the way that things are produced, that just don't make sense if you're thinking about a bigger picture. Like, oh, sure, disposable things make a lot of sense when you're thinking about convenience, but then when you're thinking about the oceans and you're thinking about, like just the accumulation of plastic crap, because we, have this, we prefer convenience to, inconvenience, and maybe doing something that's more long-term. We have to start thinking about things in new and different ways. Like, you have to look at, where does my food come from? Does it make sense to, eat food that comes from, across the world? Or does it make sense to eat food that comes from my, local farmer's market? People paying more attention to kind of the bigger picture of their health, of their life, of their money, of, how they educate their children, because like a paradigm shift, it's in all realms. And we just have to start doing things that are based off of natural law. Like, how does this universe work? What is logical? Because we're doing so many things that are so illogical, but because people are so busy and they don't pay attention, and they're just like, I just got to work. I don't have time to think about, this plastic cup. I just have to, get my Mountain Dew and get to work. We're not thinking about it because we're so rushed and so disconnected from nature. And I think paradigm shift, people get outside, they start putting their feet on the earth, and they start looking up at the sun. They start taking time to meditate. They start paying attention to how they speak to their children. They start paying attention to how they speak to themselves. They start looking at their belief systems and why they believe what they believe. And they start questioning their most deeply held beliefs about the world. They start questioning the religion they were raised in. They start questioning, the school system. They start questioning the history that they've been told. It's like, it's everything. When you start going down this road of paradigm shifting, you can't just say, oh, I'm just going to, change a little bit of my paradigm. It's kind of a radical immersion into, what is life? What am I doing? Does it make sense? Do I want to keep doing it? Does it feel good? So many people are living like miserable lives that don't feel good because they're just, they feel obligated and burdened, and they don't know another way.
Right.
And so opening up to another way means even just right now, start questioning, why do I do the things that I do? Does this make sense? Like the habits that we build, like the whole thing with generational stuff. It's like we say certain things to ourselves, we engage in certain things, and we're like, I don't even know why I do this. I picked this up from someone along the way, but I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't help me. It actually hurts me.
Yep.
Maybe I'm going to stop doing this. But unless you open your eyes and see this thing that's not working, you'll just keep doing it.
Yeah, there's a funny story. I think I think I heard it from Mike Rowe one time, where he was talking about this family whose mom always cut the ends off of a ham. Have you heard that?
Yeah, this is so good.
In the oven, and then her daughter started cutting the ends off the ham and cooking it in the oven, and then finally someone said, "Well, why do you cut the hams off?" I don't know. I think it makes it juicier. I think it makes it better. I think it makes whatever, and then trace it back to the grandma. She goes, "No, I cut the ends off because my pan was too short."
Exactly.
And now this has become a generational thing. And that's such a great just example of why we do a lot of what we do when it comes to allopathic medicine. I think, we just assume there's so much gaslighting going on. I mean, that should be the term, the word of the year. Gaslighting, because 2 years ago I probably didn't even know what that meant really, and now there's just so much of it going on. What do we do to just keep promoting this change? How do we ease people into thinking a little bit differently? How do you do it when you work with people?
Well, the people that work with me, they typically have already they've drank the Kool-Aid. They've already kind of gone down the road of because that's the thing too, like with chiropractic, the people that typically come to me have done all of the things. They've done all of the, probably the allopathic stuff, and then the holistic stuff, and all of the diets, and then all the weird stuff, and then all the weirder stuff. And then make their way to me, and they're like, okay, let me look at this through the lens of GNM. And so, but in general, like when I try to just reach people, it's with stories, it's with examples, it's with, my own experience with GNM was like, I didn't believe it just because that was Dr. Hammer's experience. I learned it. Mm-hmm. I started paying attention to it. And then I lived, and I had, I couldn't swallow something, and I had a terrible sore throat, and I had my dog licked my face and I felt gross. And then I got a zit, and I got in a fight with my partner, and then my right shoulder started hurting. And it's like, when you start seeing the connections between the symptoms that pop up in your body and the thing that happened, you'll say, oh, this is how it works. And when I'm at peace and when I'm not having conflicts, my body is just thriving. When I'm beating up on myself, when I'm, I'll get a headache, my neck will start hurting. And I start seeing the connections between self-devaluation and these certain patterns. I start seeing the connection between, if you want to bite someone, if you keep holding back, if you want to snap at someone or speak your mind, but you can't because they're your boss, or you can't because you're a teacher and they're your student, you can't do it, you're not allowed to, and you keep holding back, that causes issues with the teeth. And so if you have a toothache, you start to make these connections and you say, oh. And so those examples for me are very helpful, because people can connect to a personal story of look at your body, and then look for the story, look for what happened that caused the adaptation. And so as far as promoting it, it is, encouraging people to, and that's the thing though, it's kind of hard. It's like, how do you encourage a person to love freedom when they've been enslaved for such a long time? They don't even know what freedom tastes like. They don't even know what freedom feels like. They don't even know to want it, because they're so used to the bondage of their diagnosis, the bondage of society, the bondage of being on medication, and so they're bound by these stories that when you offer them freedom, it's kind of like the monkey example, like when you try to get the banana and it's like, oh, no, that's not safe. We can't get the banana. We can't be free. We can't do what we want to do. It's not safe. And so the mob, and that's the thing, is the mob is mad at the people who want to be free. Yes. And they are not seeing how it's like, you are loving your slavery. That's what you're doing. Is you're saying, no. Freedom isn't safe. This is safety. This is how the world is supposed to be masked and vaccinated and passported and all of this. It's like, no, the freedom is the innate thing. And so that's the thing, is we've squashed people's innate desire to be free, and we've bred it out of them. And so to waken that spark of freedom in other people, I think, is to be as free as you possibly can be. So you have to be a light. You have to kind of practice what you preach in every regard. You have to live it. And so as you're living it and just shining it, inevitably someone's going to say, she seems happier, healthier, more okay than I am. And, you don't know when that moment's going to come for a person. But if they see it and they witness it enough, and they start saying, I need to do what she's doing because what I'm doing is not working and I don't feel good. And so I think that just being yourself, shining your light, and not concerning yourself with waking people up, but just with living your best life. And if teaching is part of that, then teach. If speaking is part of that, then speak. If just being at home with your family and just loving them and living holistically as, naturally in a way that makes sense to you, then that's your mission right now.
Yeah. I think sometimes we think we have to do this really grandiose thing in order to make a difference. And that's just not how it is. If everybody just focused individually on modeling what they wanted to see, then there wouldn't be there would be no issue.
Totally.
So how do people connect with you? First of all, I know you have some events coming up, so I want to give you a chance to mention those so people can connect to you.
Yes. So go to the YouTube, watch GNM 101, watch the tutorial videos on there. There's lots and lots of content. And so go take that all in. And then if you'd like to reach out to me, you're welcome to set up. I do a free 15-minute info call through my website that you can book there. I'm also on Instagram. I do have a Telegram channel. I'm starting a new group coaching program that's going to be basically about how to bring yourself back to peace, how to radically respond in a resourceful way to whatever it is you have going on in life. And so it's going to be group coaching for people who just want support and encouragement of how to overcome the daily obstacles of your life and bring yourself back to peace. And so that's starting on June 1st. And you'll be able to find details about that on my website.
And what's your website again?
It's Dr. Melissa Sell, DrMelissasSell.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. I was really excited about having this conversation, and I hope that, it fell on the right ears and that, people will really be touched by it and look further into it, because I think this is the new frontier.
Absolutely. You are so welcome. Thank you for having me. Anytime I get to share, it was 2017 and I heard about G&M on a podcast, and it was like, I had never heard it before. No, I was like, where is all this information that Dr. Hummer did all of this incredible work? He mapped out the entire human body and all of these connections, and I had never heard of it. And so if you're hearing this, go down this rabbit hole, yes. Learn this stuff, find out how your body works. It is the future.
Yes. Thanks so much, Melissa.
You're welcome. Thank you.
If the naturally inspired movement makes sense to you, let's do this together and transform the medical model and help people take charge of their health. Learn more about how you can join the naturally inspired movement by going to naturallyinspiredadvocate.com or call me at 970-475-4862.